A very warm welcome to Mr. R.S. Sharma, ladies and gentlemen. Can we please put our hands together? Please rise with us. R.S. Sharma, Secretary, Department of Electronics and IT, Government of India. So with this note, we are just about to begin the day. I request all of you to please be seated.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all to the second annual edition of the Economic Times E-Governance Forum. It gives me an immense pleasure to be in the midst of the company of visionaries who have been instrumental in implementing e-governance in the country. Today, we will be discussing the 3 E's of Digital India, that is, easy, efficient, and economical governance. The significance of this 3 E's is growing all the more in India, especially as the vision aligns with the new government vision of building a digital India. Initiatives like Smart Cities, Jan Dhan Yojana have created quite an impact nationally. If one looks at the global market, especially the developed countries, we will know that technology and governance have collaborated, and this collaboration have resulted in economic growth and has changed the outlook of citizens towards the nation. Coming to the context of our country, we do have seen implementation of technology in governance, and this definitely have created an impact on the life of the citizen. However, we have a long way to go before the full impact of this is felt by every citizen of India, and which is the whole purpose of bringing this platform together. Today we have the gathering of all these stakeholders who will drive the vision of better governance through technology in the country. We sincerely hope the rounds of discussion are insightful enough to get real value back to the industry. Now I would like to request the experts to take the discussion forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we were expecting Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad, Honorable Minister of IT and Communication, Government of India, but due to some unforeseen commitment, he could not join us. So now, moving on, can I please request to deliver a special address, ladies and gentlemen, may I please request to join us on stage Mr. R.S. Sharma, Secretary, Department of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India. A very warm welcome. Mr. R.S. Sharma is currently working as Secretary to Government of India in the Department of Electronics and Information Technology. Mr. Sharma's contribution to the IT and e-governance has been widely recognized both within India and outside. He has been responsible for implementing a number of projects relating to ICT infrastructure, process re-engineering and service delivery in public-private partnership mode. Please welcome Mr. R.S. Sharma.
Thank you very much and good morning, friends. I'm sorry I really had to squeeze from this because I have a meeting at 10:30. So, but I'll try to sort of finish this by about that time. It is actually very appropriate that the Economic Times has organized this summit to discuss the e-governance issues. And today, this morning, I want to share with you the broader vision of the government, new government which has come into power. This broader vision is Digital India. Now, Digital India in some sense is not merely e-governance. Actually, it is a larger vision to transform India into an empowered, digitally empowered society and a knowledge economy. So it actually not only goes to specific e-governance project, but it also talks about the entire ecosystem. Talking of Digital India, it has three main components. The first component is digital infrastructure, because without having a robust digital infrastructure, it is not possible to deliver services electronically. So that is the first area. The second area is reforming and revamping all these applications so that they are able to effectively deliver services. So this is e-governance on demand in some sense. So creating an ecosystem of applications, and this not only means the applications developed by the government for e-governance purposes, but will also include applications which are developed on top of the platforms which the government provides. So this is an entire ecosystem of those applications. And the third area is to digitally empower people, because let us remember that if we create an infrastructure, if we develop applications and create the ecosystem applications, unless people become empowered and capable of accessing those applications and infrastructure, the whole picture will not be complete. So these are the three areas, and let me share with you a little bit of clips from each of these areas. So the first area is creating a digital infrastructure accessible to every citizen. And the first component of that is National Optical Fiber Network. Let's create broadband facility for every citizen in this country. And there are many means to do that. One of the important proposals and projects that the government has undertaken is the National Optical Fiber Network, which seeks to take the gigabit connectivity to each panchayat of the country. Now this is really going to be a game changer, because once every person has this connectivity and every person has the tool to access this connectivity, which is mobile and which is other kinds of tools, tablets, and then it will be able, the governance will be in each person's hands in some sense. He will be able to access information, he will be able to participate in the e-commerce of this country, he will be able to participate in the education system, he will be able to access content. So this is the basic prerequisite. Today we hear of lack of connectivity in a number of areas. You know, when we go to the villages, there are places where you don't even have a 2G connectivity, what to talk of broadband. So this whole thing will certainly remove that problem. And the timelines have also been fixed very tightly. It says that by December of 2016, all the 250,000 panchayats will get this broadband connectivity, the optical fiber touch point, the terminal point. This is extremely important. The other digital infrastructure part is a unique identity to each person, a digital identity. Now, people have not yet got the value of this proposition. The digital identity, which is unique, online, lifelong, authenticable, is extremely important and extremely empowering to each citizen. And this is not a physical infrastructure, but this is a digital infrastructure, this is a soft infrastructure which India is creating. And I'm sure you are aware, there are 720 million people in this country who now have that digital identity called Aadhaar. Now, many countries, in fact, I have been meeting since last about a month a number of proposals, number of startup companies, number of people who are going to build applications and who are actually even building those tools or the what is called equipments to access those applications. They are saying India now is able to uniquely identify each person, and each person is able to digitally authenticate himself in a digital world. Now that's a unique proposition. And we have just started scratching the surface of its utility, which is the DBTL, the direct benefit transfers in the LPG space, the banking sector, public distribution system, midday meals, attendance system. So there are a whole lot. In fact, yesterday the Honorable Minister probably had made a statement saying that in Shaadi.com people should provide the Aadhaar number so that we know that they are actual real human beings. And it's absolutely necessary. So, and there are a whole host of areas where things are coming. And now devices are coming which will be able to authenticate. We had these devices, iris devices, the fingerprint devices which were costing quite a lot of money. Now the cost of these devices are dropping down significantly. Yesterday one gentleman had come to me and he told me that you have a watch, this is a wearable device. There is an iris camera in that device. You authenticate once and then it has a Bluetooth kind of connection. So wherever you go, it automatically authenticates and you don't have to, again and again, do your authentication. This image will be able to go and will be able to authenticate. So for any service touch point you reach there and you are near that service point and you access it and it automatically transfers that image and authenticates to UIDAI and does the service. I mean, these are some of the things which are just coming. And they are saying it is not possible anywhere in the world because no country in the world has this kind of digital identity. So imagine what kind of e-commerce. I mean, I was telling the India Post the other day, friends, you just have this multiple mobile phone with a biometric fingerprint. The total device costs you about 7,000, 8,000 rupees. You put it to every postman. Now, every postman can use this device for transacting banks, working like a PC. He can do the, for example, you take registered letters to somebody, and then you get his signature, and then you create a paper. What is the use? You just take his biometric auth and you are done. Similarly, e-commerce, India Post can play a huge role in logistics. Basically delivering parcel and packets in the rural areas, because rural areas, those DHLs of the world don't have that access. So therefore, it is now this simple device, through this simple device, this person can do multiple functions, starting from banking to delivery to other kinds of authentication, so it is possible. So this is the second attribute of Digital India, which is create an identity infrastructure to every person, so that every person is able to participate in digital service delivery and authenticate himself or herself uniquely and in a real-time sense. The other part is mobile connection to every person. We already have 900 million connections, and even if you consider some of them to be the duplicates or not functional, even then you have about 600 to 700 million people. Now 1.2 billion people, about 300 billion or 250 million families. So already one family has got one mobile phone minimum. Now this mobile phone, if you connect it with the digital identity somehow, this itself becomes a tool of authentication. And mobile phone, you are able to today do the banking, you can participate in all kinds of activities, information and services. And the third is finance, bank account to every person. So basically, bank account will ensure your financial inclusion. You can participate in financial space. So the identity number, the bank account number, and the mobile number. These three numbers are numbers of empowerment. So this is another prerequisite for Digital India. Digital India also talks about the infrastructure category, private space and public cloud to every person. And also it says the government shall not ask any person a physical copy of the document which has been issued by some other department of the government to that person. So when I apply for a job, I have to submit a whole host of certificates. I have to submit my caste certificate, my domicile certificate, my high school certificate, intermediate, degree, all kinds of stuff. Now that really, these certificates are all issued by some department of the state government or the state government or some other government. So some government has issued these certificates. Now why should another government agency ask for this physical copy of the certificate? Why can't these certificates be dematerialized Gagan Rai is here, dematerialized, and like the share certificate that dematerialized, and a person is just able to digitally say this is where my certificate lies. This is my depository, this is my number. You can have some unique identity number for the certificates also. All certificates can be actually connected to an Aadhaar number. So what we are talking about a digital locker to each person, which will be basically based on his Aadhaar number, where he or she can store all his certificates digitally, and also digitally store these certificates in depositories. And we should ensure that the entire transaction and verification, etc. of these certificates takes in a digital manner, not really asking a person to give the physical copy of certificate notarized and notified and certified by government agencies, etc. This will actually eliminate harassment of the people. This will not require them to submit the certificates again and again. It will also remove fraud, because you are able to, basically do a fraud with these certificates. You can fake these certificates and submit them. People have got pilot licenses on the basis of these false certificates. They've been flying planes in this country. And recently there were examples in some state where teachers were appointed on fake certificates. So this fakeness will also go away once you have the dematerialization, some kind of verification, some kind of star rating of the certificate. There are system can be developed. And to sort of tell you, we have already developed an architecture for this kind of massive digitization of the certificates, and NSDL, Government of Maharashtra, NIC, they are all participating in a pilot. So the concept is there, the concept and ecosystem of the depositories, an ecosystem of the requesters, and the way it is going to operate. So this is again creating an infrastructure where you are dematerializing and digitizing all kinds of certificates of people, and it's a massive work. So this is another attribute of Digital India. So we have a number of these wish lists or these things which should be done, the things which the Digital India should have, those things are sort of listed out. We also, the second part, which is basically, the applications must be integrated and they must provide services to the citizen on demand. Citizen will not have to run from one application to another website. So essentially, we are creating open APIs of these websites so that these systems can talk to each other. At the same time, we are also mandating that every application must publish APIs so that people can build on top of these applications their own mobile apps which can actually access information from these applications. This is necessary. Somehow these applications which have been built so far are essentially quite silos. They are just applications for solving their own problem. There are a large number of systems which have to talk to each other. For example, the courts application has to talk to the jails application. The jails application will have to talk to the police application, the FIR application. This has to talk to prosecution application. So all these 4 applications which are basically connected to the criminal justice administration system, they have to talk to each other. And therefore, we have to have those common APIs, intercommunication protocols, which will ensure that they talk to each other. So this is another very, very important part. And what we are doing, the mission mode projects which have been done thus far, we are rearranging them, we are redesigning them so that they become absolutely, they are able to communicate. They also become efficient, they also become web-based. They are also able to use platforms. For example, just one simple example of a platform. Every application, most of the applications require payment of some money to the government. If I want to apply for a driving license, I'll have to pay money to the government. And currently people are paying challans, and they visit the bank and they fill 4 copies of challan and then sign. In some states it's being done. But then there are better methods of payment, electronic payment methods. So some states have migrated to the electronic payment methods. But there also what is happening is that they are devising their own solutions. So each department of the government is essentially, sort of having agreements with the banks, and then, they are signing those agreements and they are doing those things in a very, very silo manner again. So So imagine there are n departments and n financial institutions, then you have to have n into n agreements. Or maybe more than that, I don't know how many, order of MN or whatever. So this is the problem. So we need to simplify these things. And therefore, we have developed platforms, India PayGov, which essentially means all banks on one side, all the agencies to whom the money is to be paid on another side, and it is absolutely easy to integrate in any application. So departments will not have to do these kinds of agreements. Similarly, SMS gateway. Everybody is, contracting with the telcos, the SMS facility. I want to send 1,000 SMS in a month, give me some rates. So everybody is calling for tenders. Now there is an SMS gateway of the Government of India, which actually is transacting about 6 or 7 crore SMSs per month. So this SMS gateway is extremely easy to integrate. So what we are saying is all the applications must use these platforms so that the the development time reduces. They don't have to get into agreements and contracts and others separately. These are important. Similarly, modularize each of these applications so that you have common application software. Today the situation is that one problem has n solutions. There is a treasury, and more or less treasury codes are similar in each state, but there are 35 solutions of this treasury. And of course, 35 consulting agencies are earning money out of this, and the intention is not to sort of make everybody out of business. And then there are some consultants who are my friends also, they are sitting here. So I don't want to sort of take it. But what I want to say is, many times these multiple solutions are not optimal solutions. They are suboptimal solutions. And actually, if the same problem has 35 solutions, it is of no use. I mean, the way it should be done is, if the problem is the same, we must develop a common solution. And if there are regional or state variations, those variations must be provided for in the configuration. Even in your